After the boar attack during the hunt, Robert Baratheon was rushed back to the Red Keep, bloodied but still alive. Master Pycelle treated his wounds with herbs and sleeping wine, and against all the court's expectations, the king survived. During his recovery, Eddard Stark, still Hand of the King, decided to reveal the truth he had discovered about the Queen's children. Ned knew it was a delicate moment, but he couldn't keep the secret any longer. He approached Robert on the bed. "They're not your children, Robert. They're all Jaime Lannisters." Robert's gaze darkened with fury. Robert rose from the bed with difficulty, immediately ordering Cersei to be brought before him. She tried to remain haughty, but the king's voice cut like a blade. "You betrayed me, you betrayed the kingdom. Say it with your mouth, woman." Cersei kept her gaze steady, but silence was her sentence. Jaime, alerted by the queen's guards, burst into the room sword in hand, but Ned and Ser Barristan were ready. "You dare draw your blade in front of your king?" shouted Robert before Ned Stark plunged it through Jaime's leg. Cersei screamed as her brother and lover fell, but the king's guard arrested her immediately afterwards. The execution was public. Robert wanted the people to know that the betrayal would not be forgiven, not even by his wife and the powerful House Lannister. Cersei was taken to the square, and there she lost her head to the blade of the royal executioner. The people murmured in shock as Robert watched without looking away. "From now on, only royal blood will sit on the Iron Throne," he declared. Chaos spread in King's Landing, but the message was clear. The king would no longer be manipulated. Tywin Lannister, on Casterly Rock, welcomed Cersei and Jaime's bastard children, protecting them as heirs to the house. Despite the public humiliation, Tywin waited for the right moment to strike back. But at that moment, there was nothing he could do. His prestige had been tarnished, his daughter killed, and his grandchildren disinherited. Robert was consolidating his power, feared by some, hated by others, but undeniably respected. Ned, however, began to fear his old friend's choices. The throne, now surrounded by shadows, took on a new face with Robert's survival. He became a different king, tougher, less tolerant. His love of drink diminished, replaced by a desire for revenge and reparation. Eddard watched him plunge down a dark path, suspicious of everyone and everything. "That's not justice, Robert. It's fury," he once said. "And fury is the emblem on my coat of arms," replied the king, before leaving the room with a hardened look on his face. The years passed, and Robert sought to re-establish alliances to ensure the continuity of his dynasty. His marriage to Margaery Tyrell, a young and influential woman, was a political move devised by the High Kingdom, and Robert, enchanted by her beauty and docility, accepted without reluctance. The marriage produced a strong, healthy boy named Steffan after Robert's father. The new heir brought a certain stability to the kingdom, and the murmurs about Cersei's children were buried over time. The people, tired of conflict, welcomed the new queen and the rightful prince. Ned Stark, now back at court at the king's request, remained secretive about a secret he had carried for years: Jon Snow's true origins. The weight of the promise made to his sister Lyanna in his last moments had never left his conscience. But with the birth of the Baratheon heir and Robert's old threats to the Targaryens still fresh in his memory, Ned decided that Jon needed to know the truth. One silent night, in the king's private chamber, Ned spoke. "He's Rhaegar's son, and Lyanna's. She asked me to protect him. Jon is dragon blood and wolf blood." Robert paled. The wine glass fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. The fury that had always burned in his chest reignited with intensity. "You knew this all along? A Targaryen alive under my roof? You, my friend, my brother, betrayed me." Ned tried to argue, his voice firm. "He's your nephew by Lyanna's blood. She loved you. He's just a fair and honorable boy." But nothing calmed Robert's inflamed heart. "I killed dozens of Targaryens to save this kingdom, and now I find out you've secretly created one to replace him?" he roared. The order was clear: Jon must die. Robert could no longer hear reason, blinded by rage and old ghosts of war. Ned, in shock, refused to carry out the order. "If you want my innocent relative dead, let it be with your own hands. I won't be an accomplice." Robert shouted to the guards to arrest Ned for treason, but the Lord of Winterfell was already moving in a hurry. "With the help of your allies, faithful to the ancient pact between North and Crown, Ned escaped in the dead of night. His priority now was to protect Jon, even if it meant disobeying the throne." The departure to Winterfell marked the definitive break between the two former war brothers. Robert, now overcome by paranoia, declared Ned a traitor to the kingdom. "May the old gods and the new judge him," declared the king in front of the court. Meanwhile, Ned returned to the north with Jon by his side, revealing to the boy the truth about his origins during the long journey. "You have the blood of the dragon and the wolf, Jon. But who you choose to be, that's up to you." In Winterfell, tension was growing, and the North was beginning to prepare for the worst. The declaration of war came like a thunderclap that resounded across the continent. Robert, feeling betrayed by Ned Stark, moved with fury against the North. "The North rises up against the throne. Then it will be crushed," he declared in front of the crowd in King's Landing. With the support of Houses Arryn, Tully, Tyrell, Martell, and Baratheon of Storm's End, Robert formed an alliance of 5 kingdoms, determined to subdue the wolves. The war promised to be devastating. In the north, Ned rallied his vassals, but knew they were at a disadvantage. When a letter sealed with the Lion of Casterly Rock reached him, offering alliance, Ned knew his destiny was changing. Tywin Lannister, embittered by the death of his daughter Cersei and thirsting for revenge, proposed joining forces against the throne. "Robert killed my daughter in front of the people. He left my name tarnished. That will not go unanswered." Ned replied cautiously, "If our enemies are the same, perhaps we can resist." The alliance was sealed with the steel of necessity, not the warmth of trust. Lannister troops marched north, joining the armies of Winterfell. The banners of the wolf and the lion now fluttered side by side. The first battles were bloody. The Vale and the Trident pressed the northern border, but House Lannister remained on the front line, absorbing the initial impact of the royal onslaught. Tywin, ever the strategist, personally commanded the defenses at Harrenhal, but Robert's brute force, coupled with his unrelenting hatred, became a hurricane. In an ambush in the fields of the Campina, Tywin was surrounded and slaughtered, even surrounded by his guard. "For what you've done against my kingdom, for everything you've taken from me," said Robert before sinking his warhammer into the Lion Lord's skull. Joffrey, now second in line to Casterly Rock, led some of the troops with arrogance and cruelty. Ignoring Jaime's advice, he launched a direct attack on the royal army. He was killed by Storm's End archers, and his body was left as a warning. With the death of Tywin and Joffrey, House Lannister was on the brink of extinction. That left Jaime, who spoke as a warrior, not as a lord. "May the gods have mercy, for men will not." Even with the losses, the North stood, fueled by anger and honor. Ned looked out over the devastated fields and saw the banners of fallen men covering the land like leaves in winter. He knew that his alliance with the Lannisters would not last forever. "The lion roars now, but he may bite later," he murmured to Robb, who was growing by his side as commander. The war was intensifying, and Robert showed no signs of tiring. "I want to see the North on its knees and Jon Snow's head brought to me," said the king, increasingly overcome by the darkness that consumed him. With the kingdoms at war and the North weakened by the loss of allies, Ned saw that there was no way he could win alone. The world was changing, and it was time to appeal to the blood that ran in Jon. He sent the boy to Meereen to find Daenerys Targaryen, the exiled heiress of the dragons. "You are Rhaegar's son. If anyone can unite the kingdom beyond war, it's you," he said before leaving. Jon arrived in Slaver's Bay as a messenger of hope, bringing forgotten truths and promises of alliance. Daenerys listened to him in silence, but when he knelt down, he declared, "I want a fair kingdom, and I need you to build it." The alliance was forged not just in words, but in the heart. Daenerys and Jon were married in a simple ceremony, watched by Tyrion, Missandei, and the armies of freedmen. The dragons at first found the presence of the new Targaryen strange, but Rhaegal, named after Daenerys' older brother Rhaegar, Jon's father, approached Jon naturally. "It's as if you recognize his blood," Daenerys commented, touching the beast's neck. From that day on, Jon flew alongside the queen in the warm skies of Essos. With the Unsullied and the Dothraki assembled, they set sail for Westeros. The plan was clear: to overthrow Robert and put an end to the cycle of blood. The war came to King's Landing like thunder from the sea. Dragons flew over the city, while Daenerys and Jon's troops surrounded the gates. Viserion was hit by dozens of scorpion spears as he flew low, trying to protect the infantry. His body went up in flames between the walls, and Daenerys' roar echoed like an ancient lament. "They'll pay for this," she said, her eyes burning. Mounted by Jon, an enraged Rhaegal swept the towers with emerald fire. While the skies burned, Ned led troops through the sewers, as Varys had taught him years before. Robert, still wearing his black armor and holding his warhammer, refused to back down. "I'll finish what I started. One less Targaryen in this world," he shouted in the middle of the battle. But it wasn't Jon who stood up to him. It was Ned Stark. The two former war brothers, now enemies, met in the throne room, amidst rubble and dead soldiers. "No more blood, Robert," said Ned. "Not until I see your head roll, Stark," replied the king before advancing. The fight was brutal and brief. Robert, weakened by age and rage, fell with the blade of ice embedded in his chest. When the dust of war had settled, the bells of King's Landing rang out. Rhaegal and Drogon circled over the city, and the people, tired of angry kings, knelt before their new rulers. Jon was crowned king of the Seven Kingdoms, Daenerys as his queen, not by force of conquest, but by the promise of a new world. "The wheel has been broken," said Daenerys to the people gathered on the steps of the Iron Throne. Jon only added, "Now we'll build something better, together." The old days had died with Robert. A new reign, shaped by ice and fire, had begun. With the Seven Kingdoms finally unified under the new reign, peace seemed possible for the first time in decades. But the real threat, the one that had always lurked in the frozen north, had not been forgotten. Reports came in of abandoned villages, the dead walking again, snowstorms coming out of nowhere. Jon, now king, knew that the White Wanderers were approaching. "The war against men is over, but the war for humanity has only just begun," he told the royal council. Daenerys, at his side, gazed steadily at the horizon. The dragons were made for this moment. With Rhaegal and Drogon, Jon, a true Stark, and Daenerys led the armies beyond the wall. The people of the north hailed them as heroes, but there was fear in the air. The icy lands seemed cursed, and the living barely dared to breathe. In the forests beyond Castle Black, the Wanderers advanced relentlessly, led by the Night King on his spectral mount. The first battle was at Duralur, where thousands of dead fell under the dragon's fire. But every victory came with losses. The Dothraki were almost wiped out, and the Unsullied held the lines until they bled on the ice. The final confrontation took place on the plains of Winterfell, under a dark sky and an unlit moon. The Night King, with his spectral generals, appeared out of the mist like an omen of doom. Drogon faced one of the dead dragons, while Rhaegal descended with Jon on his back, tearing the sky apart with his green flames. Daenerys was flying high, commanding the battlefield like a goddess of destruction. But it was so cold that even the fire seemed to give way. The Night King advanced slowly, indifferent to the arrows, swords, and flames. Jon knew he would have to face him face to face. The encounter was solemn. Ice met fire. Silence dominated everything when Jon came face to face with the Night King, Rhaegal roaring behind him. And when the monster raised his frozen blade, Jon looked up at Daenerys in the sky, and Rhaegal spat out a blast of green and gold fire that engulfed the Night King's body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as the Night King emerged from the flames, Jon launched an arrow made of dragonglass, hitting the King of the Dead in the chest. The ice crackled, and the body of the Ancient Dark being exploded into 1,000 fragments. The surrounding dead fell lifeless, finally freed from the dark magic. The victory was silent, shrouded in snow and ash. Jon walked among the bodies of the fallen, many of whom had fought for him. Daenerys landed beside him, and the two looked at each other, not as king and queen, but as survivors of a broken world. "The living have won," she said, touching Jon's hand. He only replied, "And now we must live so that this never happens again." The dragons flew over Winterfell once more, while the people of the north raised torches in honor of the dead. The long night was over.